Humans make incredible discoveries every year, so today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at some recent discoveries. "11 boats washed ashore." When the first North Korean boat washed up on the western shore of Japan, their Coast Guard was seriously alarmed. There have been 11 boats found over the years since 2017, and more information comes to light as to what happened to this mysterious fleet. The first few boats that ended up on Japanese coasts had decomposing human remains aboard. The boats have been called ghost ships. Some had markings indicating that it belonged to the North Korean fishing industry and a few to the North Korean army. One boat even had a tattered North Korean flag. Although there have been no reports from the North Korean government of any missing ships. In November 2017, a small boat carrying 8 alive men arrived at Yuri Honjo Marina. According to the passengers, they were North Korean fishermen who had gotten into trouble at sea. It was not long before the Japanese Coast Guard found another boat with 10 alive men who also claimed that they were North Korean fishermen. Both ships didn't have modern navigation instruments and engines. They were simple sea vessels that appeared to be rickety. One question which everyone was thinking when this story broke out was, can we believe what these guys are saying? There are a few theories as to why these boats ended up in Japan. Were these men, which were found alive, telling the truth? That they were indeed humble fishermen that just got lost in the sea? Another theory was that they were defectors or refugees trying to escape North Korea in hopes of having a better life in Japan. And others thought they were spies trying to retrieve information that the North Korean military can use as a tactical advantage against their enemies. Considering the data gathered by the Japanese Coast Guard, the closest explanation to this mystery has something to do with the North Korean economic system of quasi-capitalism. There have been stricter international sanctions following Pyongyang's nuclear and missile tests. This created a bigger demand for agricultural production, putting more pressure on fishermen to hit their target. What made matters worse for them was the North Korean government sold fishing rights to China, scaling down the area in which North Korean fishermen can venture out to. This pushed them to take greater risks by going further out to sea. So far that their small fishing vessels were not able to withstand strong currents, causing them to end up on the shores of its Japanese neighbours. Whether or not this is true, nobody knows, except for the few men that came back alive, all of whom asked to be returned to their country after they've been found by the Japanese Coast Guard. What exactly happened to the rest of the boats that came back with nothing but corpses? Are there going to be more ships washing up in Western Japan? The only certain thing in this story is that North Korea stays enigmatic about the whole issue. 11 boats and at least 20 of their men ended up in Japan, and the world heard nothing but silence from their government. Oil tanker washes up on Liberia beach with no crew or lifeboats. In Liberia, West Africa, an oil tanker by the name of Tamaya 1 washed up on shore abandoned and without a surviving crew member in sight. The officials of Liberia have launched an investigation into the matter and, most importantly, what happened to the tanker's crew and if any of them managed to make it out alive. The Liberian Bureau of Immigration looked at the ship mere days after its discovery by the people living near the beach. The tanker is 210 feet or 64 meters high, and its last reported position was near Senegal on the 21st of April 2016. The ship was supposed to head to the Senegalese port, Dakar, according to the marine traffic. Despite carrying out an investigation, the maritime Liberian authorities refused to comment on the situation, though a source from the authorities in the Liberian Daily Observer stated, "Our best bet is that the vessel's owner might have gone broke and had no money to pay crew members, and the crew abandoned the ship." A theory arose in the local area that modern pirates hijacked the ship and forced the crew off it, stealing some of its contents. In West Africa, piracy occurs around the south of Liberia and in the waters of Nigeria and Ghana. It is a relatively common occurrence. Piracy and maritime kidnappings are a growing issue even now in 2021. Many believe that the theorized pirates took the lives of the people on Tenache 1, or alternatively kidnapped them and took them for ransom. Very often during these pirate attacks, the criminals take bystanders hostage, though as of now there is no evidence to suggest something like this occurred, but 5 years later the fates of the crew are still unknown. Still, it is an interesting theory to consider, especially with the high rates of piracy happening on the Western African seas. Another more grounded theory posed was that there was a fire on the deck which made the crew flee with the lifeboats. Mere days after washing up, the ship was promptly looted by locals and vandalized, and the local authorities have put measures in place to keep the civilians away. The name Tenache refers to a Shinto altar used for worshipping the dead, specifically ancestors. Another translation would be Cornice of the Ghosts. An oil tanker mysteriously washes up on the shores of a country named after supernatural worship without a living soul to be seen. Could something unimaginable have happened to Tenache 1's crew? Something far more paranormal than we could fathom. We are not privy to know what became of the crew and are left only to speculate on their whereabouts or if they even survived whatever may have happened to them. Carla Valdez disappearance. Peru is one of the top destinations in the world for many travelers. Machu Picchu, the Nazca Lines, and the Amazon jungle all make up a country of untold beauty and delicious foods that excite every visitor. One such traveler was Carla Valdez, a 35-year-old American. She had traveled alone to 20 countries by 2018, but never experienced Peru, her ultimate dream. Carla was legally blind but extensively traveled because she did not want to be limited by her disability. When her friend, Alicia Garcia Steele, went to a wedding in Lima, Peru in December 2018, Carla jumped on the opportunity and tagged along. Nearing the end of their 2-week trip, she decided to hike Machu Picchu alone, despite concern from her friend. She never returned from that hike. Her friend was nervous about the hike Carla was on and texted her numerous times, begging for an update and notification that she safely arrived at the site. It took 12 hours until Carla finally responding, apologizing for not messaging earlier due to a lack of Wi-Fi. Carla also explained in her texts that she had a big problem to resolve before leaving for home, but never told her friend what it was. When she failed to make her flight back home, Alicia Steele reported her missing. Police discovered that she joined a group of Argentinians and Spaniards to hike Huayna Picchu, but returned with them to Cusco after some hours. They all went to dinner together and danced at a club before spending the night in a hostel. Early the next morning, a surveillance camera caught her getting into a cab outside her hostel. She left personal belongings and souvenirs behind, so police assumed she intended to return. She ended up taking 2 cabs to get to the village of Pisac. It was there that she vanished. Immediately after receiving news of his daughter's disappearance, Carlos Valdez flew from Texas to Peru to search for her. The 71-year-old traveled throughout the region, visiting various villages and handing out flyers to everyone. He realized that the locals distrusted the police and were wary of revealing information, so he took it upon himself to lead the investigation. It had taken the authorities a week after she went missing to figure out what cabs she took. Her father was the one who discovered the group she spent time with, the backpack she left at the hostel, and the surveillance footage. A pharmacy surveillance camera caught Carla's last known image 1 hour after leaving her hostel. She was walking along the street, heading towards Pisac Archaeological Park. Nearby street vendors confirmed that she asked them for directions to the park that day. The archaeological ruins and terraces sit on a mountainside valley of 4 square kilometers, surrounded by jungle. Police tried to send in rescue teams and dogs, but found nothing. They now suspect that she was a victim of foul play. Her mother and brother remain in New York, but assisted the father by sending money, studying maps of the region, and making phone calls to receive help. The US State Department will not help the family, claiming they have no jurisdiction to launch investigations in Peru. The officials in Peru, though, say that the US authorities have made no offer to help. It has now been 2 years, and the family still has no answers. They set up a GoFundMe page, which has provided her father with the funds to continue his desperate search. The disappearance of Tenache Chitambo. A brother and sister from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, visited Victoria Falls when the 25-year-old brother went missing. On March 25, 2012, Tenache Chitambo was touring the national park with his sister Mitchell. In the morning, they explored the rainforest near the Zambezi River, spending a few hours on tour. They then broke for lunch and visited the Shearwater restaurant near the entrance to the park. After their lunch, Tenache decided to head back for a solo tour of the falls, but he never returned. His sister grew worried at his absence and by 2 p.m. chose to notify the local rangers. The rangers immediately jumped into action and set up a search of the forest for him. The national park covers an expanse of 23 square kilometers, and they had no real idea of where he went. Around the same time as the search began, a witness came to the park entrance and told the rangers he had seen a man loitering around the falls and seemed a bit suspicious. It is unclear whether that man was Tenache or not, and the lead eventually went nowhere. The Parks and Wildlife Management Authority set up a broad search of the park with many volunteers, but failed to find any clue of his whereabouts. After a week, they ultimately suspended it and sent the search and rescue teams home. They continued the investigation and conducted searches on smaller levels, but had no leads to follow. The waterfalls, river, and dense forest conditions make it extremely difficult, especially after a rainy season. Unfortunately, at least one person passes away at Victoria Falls every year, with many more sustaining injuries. They stand too close to the edge and slip on wet rocks or sit in the water and get swept away by strong surges. The management and investigators claimed they would proceed with the case, but 9 years later, his family still has no answer. The authorities never found a body and believed that it might be a case of the man taking his own life. His sister and parents vehemently deny that this was the case, but too much time has passed to ever know for sure. But what do you make of these interesting discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.